is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and good things come to those who wait, I'd say. This is the ThinkPad T470s. The S is the kind of more upscale and lighter model of the T470. And why do I say good things come to those who wait? Because the Carbon has been out for a while, the X1 Carbon, also a lovely ThinkPad, but really it's on the expensive side. So this brings a lot of the same things to the table for several $100s less money. We're going to look at it now. So the ThinkPad T470s is, no surprise, the replacement for the T460s. What's new is Intel 7th generation Kaby Lake dual-core 15-watt CPUs, always Ultrabook dual-core CPUs in here with Intel HD 620 graphics, and we now have Thunderbolt 3. The design is pretty much the same. It is available in silver as well as traditional ThinkPad black, which is like, ooh, you know, I'm used to ThinkPads being black. I've never gotten used to silver, but I know some of you like that. So, hey, that's cool that we have the option available. No extra charge for any particular color here. And speaking of that, you know, the ThinkPad is sort of, you know, I know some of you are young enough to actually not remember when BlackBerries were a thing. You've heard about it, but you've never lived through it. ThinkPads back in the IBM days, well, that's even further ago. But Lenovo has done a very good job of keeping them relevant, yes. They're still black rectangles. They're still unassuming. They're not flashy like MacBook Pros, but it has a look. It's very clean looking. It's very thin. It's very light. It's very modern. Carbon fiber and magnesium. It's incredibly durable. So very nice there. And as you can see, as we look around, what's particularly neat about this is all the ports that it has on it. For something that's 2.9 pounds or 1.3 kilograms and 18.8 millimeters, really not much bigger than the ThinkPad X1 Carbon. We have things like Ethernet. We have 3 USB 3.0 ports. We have Thunderbolt 3, which is not easy to squeeze into a small chassis. You have your HDMI here. You have optional LTE, a Qualcomm X7 modem, Sierra wireless module. So a lot of nice stuff going on in here. And if you're wondering what this new stand is that we got to use, this is a Rain design stand. This is the M360, so it's a neat laptop stand for actually using, not just showing off in videos, that sort of thing. So the regular T70 weighs about 3.5 pounds, and this is 2.9 pounds, so it's significantly lighter. What do you lose here? There's no bridge battery system. The regular T-Series has a removable battery and a permanently installed internal battery, both. So this has two batteries. They're actually split into two modules, but they're probably split to allow for the Thunderbolt 3 communication wiring inside of here. You can't use things like ribbon cables. You have to have actually hardware traces on the motherboard, that sort of thing. When you compare it to the ThinkPad X1 Carbon, and I'll show you the comparison in a minute about how they look, well, that's even lighter at 2.49 pounds or 1.13 kilograms, and it has a slightly smaller footprint. You lose a few ports in the process, like the Ethernet port, and you lose the internal RAM slot as well when you go down to something as small as the Carbon. Now, as you go from the T470 to the T470s to the X1 Carbon, the display gets better with each one. The poor T70 gets the worst display. It actually starts with a 720p display, and the 1080p is optional. The T470s starts with a 1080p. These are all IPS matte non-touch displays. Then there's a 1080p touch display that we have, and lastly a WQHD 2560 by 1440 display, and that one has the best color gamut and is also brighter. Our 1080p touch display has color gamut. I mean, experientially, it actually looks nice enough when you look at it, and the contrast ratio is quite good on it, but color gamut is obviously, you can see the metrics right there on screen, not that impressive, especially, you know, around the $1,000 in more consumer-oriented rather than business-oriented laptops. We typically see nearly full sRGB coverage versus the 68% here. But like I said, to look at it, to watch a movie on it, it's just not that bad. Now, given the fact that it's not very bright, unless you get the WQHD display, which is about 300 nits, this one here at 236 nits is something you're going to want to use indoors, not outdoors. Now, if you're looking at the X1 Carbon, of course, it starts with a really nice 1080p display option that is 300 nits and does have that full sRGB coverage. When it comes to performance, these are available with Core i5 and i7 dual-core CPUs. There's a vPro options as well if you want. So you got the 7200U, the 7300U, the 7500U, the 7600U, so on. We have the 7300U as a Core i5 with 8 gigs of DDR4 RAM, 2133 megahertz, and a 256 gig Samsung PCIe NVMe SSD. Now, the cheapest models have SSDs still, but they're going to be SATA interface instead of PCIe, be the slower interface, in other words. You can go all the way up to a terabyte of storage. The architecture here is interesting. You know, a couple of years ago, we saw a lot of laptops that had 4 gigs of RAM soldered on board, which this does have, and a RAM slot. And we haven't seen that as much lately. Well, it's here in this model, and Lenovo's been doing that with some like ThinkPad X1 Yoga, some of their models. So our 8 gig model has 4 gigs soldered on board onto the motherboard and a 4 gig RAM module. So that's set up as dual channel because you got 4 gigs identical. You can go up to 20 gigs. And in fact, even if you order it from Lenovo, you can, if you put a 16 gig DDR4 module inside. So there's a little versatility there in terms of RAM upgrades. You got the usual Intel 8265 AC Wi-Fi with Bluetooth 4.1. That's Intel's higher end adapter, and it performs well here. Now, in terms of CPU performance and graphics, well, it's Intel HD 620 graphics, like any Ultrabook. Yes, it has a Thunderbolt 3 port, so in theory, if you wanted to, you could use an external Thunderbolt 3 graphics amplifier, but if you're looking at gaming, the CPU will be the bottleneck there. I just don't really get the idea of using Ultrabooks with external Thunderbolt 3 graphics amplifiers. That said, the CPU performance on this and benchmarks is very strong. Lenovo's done a good job with that. Now, one thing that I did notice is that when it was running, say, PCMark 8, it wasn't going all the way to max turbo boost when both cores were being engaged, which is interesting. And it looks like they have their thermal ceiling set a little bit low, like 75 degrees centigrade, where 100 is the max allowable. Despite that, it managed very high scores, and it doesn't get loud and it doesn't get hot to the touch. In fact, it is quieter than the X1 Carbon. Because the X1 Carbon is even smaller, well, you know, the smaller it is, the louder it's going to get. So the X1 Carbon had sometimes an annoying fan. This one, it would kick on for moderate usage, but it's not particularly loud. So it really, I wouldn't call that an issue. The keyboard on this, as with most ThinkPads, is about as comfy as you can get. No weird, super low travel things going on here. You have ample key travel, you have excellent damping, you have the smile-shaped keys. I mean, this is a typist dream, and yeah, it's backlit with the usual FN plus spacebar to turn on backlighting. You have the nav point, track point, pointer for you ThinkPad aficionados who've been using that or used to it, and a normal trackpad that behaves really well on this. If you opt for the optional fingerprint scanner, which isn't a big spend, that's going to be to the right of the trackpad on this. So Lenovo offers 2 different compact 45-watt chargers with this. We have the one that uses the usual Lenovo rectangular connector. That seems to be the standard one, but you can get one that plugs into the USB-C port, and we have USB-C Lenovo chargers, ThinkPad ones sitting around too, like that for the X1 Carbon. That works as well, so you can go either route with this one. Again, there's 2 batteries inside. They're not removable, though. I mean, you have to open up the bottom to access them. There's no like little lever to pop them out like there is with the T470 non-S model. So you have a 23.5 watt-hour front battery and a 26 watt-hour rear battery. They're both 3-cell batteries, so that's 49.5 watt-hours total, which is around typical for an Ultrabook of this size. Now, Lenovo claims up to 12.5 hours runtime, and obviously it's going to depend on which CPU you have and which display you have, generally touch, or higher resolution panels will require more power. And typically this lasted about as long as our X1 Carbon did, which is to say around 7 hours on a charge. To take off the bottom cover, it's straightforward and easy. You have 5 Phillips head screws right there. This is a keyboard release. That's not something you have to undo. You can hear it. That's metal. These are captive screws, which means there's a little retainer so you don't have to screw them until they come out. It makes life easy. And here we go. You got your 2 batteries right here. Obviously, we have the stereo speakers, which typical of ThinkPads for business-oriented laptops. They're pretty loud and they're pretty full. No problem hearing them while using an exercise bike at full speed. 1 cooling fan, which is appropriate given the fact that we have integrated graphics, and here is our RAM slot right here. This is our M2 SSD. Again, we have an NVMe SSD in here. This is our Wi-Fi card that's socketed as per normal, and this is where, if you got the LTE module, the Sierra Wireless module, it would go right here, and here's the antenna lines that are available to connect to it. So pretty straightforward stuff inside. Nice that you actually have the RAM slot going on here, and there's the internals. So that's the Lenovo ThinkPad T470s is available now. Again, starting price is around $1179 in the United States, and as configured, ours is around $1,500, pretty nicely configured at that. So it's a versatile laptop, traditional laptop, that's as far back as it goes. And all the positives would be backlit keyboard, really nice keyboard, that typical ThinkPad, wonderful keyboard, excellent trackpad, matte display, even if you get the touch option. And if you go up to the QHD, you get a pretty nice color gamut. The 1080p, so-so. I think most people will enjoy it enough for casual use, for watching movies and for work and all that sort of thing. It's very thin, it's very light. It has Thunderbolt 3. It has a wealth of other ports, given how thin and light it is, including Ethernet. Wow, that's pretty unusual these days, and a docking connector too. Definitely worth a strong look. If you're looking for a 14-inch thin and light laptop that's the usual durable ThinkPad kind of build quality here, and maybe the X1 Carbon appeals, but it's a little too expensive for you, definitely check this one out too. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos, and thumbs up if you like this vid.